Gamma's little voice can make the loudest noise. And if they try to tell me my own fate,
Hello, everybody, and welcome as we are here for the analyst desk for the Dorado Championship Series, gearing up for our grand finals featuring Dorado Gaming Omega and Dorado Gaming Gamma. And I am your host, Elsa the Queen, for tonight, and I'm joined by my wonderful three analysts, Chelsea, Zol, as well as Sultan. Thank you so much for being here, and how's everybody doing?
Thank you for having me. I had a good day. Feeling excited mainly to see who wins the Dorado Championship Series.
As you can imagine, doing pretty well. Just won another chip. Holding the treble right now, top of the world. It's pretty much, feel pretty vindicated. That told everybody we'd win everything, and we won everything. So, feeling pretty good.
Oh, I'm just personally interested. Like most of the games that I've seen Dorado for now has been going to game fives. Who wins a game five between Dorado versus Dorado? I guess again Dorado, but which team? This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, Sultan, you alluded to those best of fives. I'm sorry, did somebody else have something to say about that first?
Oh, I mean, I was just gonna say that's pretty rough. I think we've all gotten a lot of we've all watched a lot of matches recently with Joker in high stress situations, and as much clutch as people on Gamma might have, I don't know if there's any individual that has more clutch than Joker in Game 5. So I'd have to say that Gamma probably doesn't want this to go to Game 5 because I've never seen somebody perform more than Joker has when his back's against the wall.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had the pleasure last week I don't know, when was it? Sometime of doing some casting of Dorado Gaming Gamma against that was Gamma against ID Eclipse. And I was just going to say, I think Game 5 for Gamma, seeing the difference between Hasm's Game 5 on that GP versus the Joker Game 5, that kind of adds a little bit to it. But, going into what I was saying about kind of how they got here, Sultan alluded to it as well. First, talking about Dorado Gaming Gamma, like I said, in the regular season, they did go 6-1, so just only dropping that one set, and they dropped both of their individual games in that one set as well. I'm somebody who remembers more than me. Can remind me who they actually lost to?
Reign of
Kings.
Reign of Kings, of course, the Kings themselves. So only that one regular season, kind of flop for them, but other than that, really smooth all the way. And then as they entered the upper bracket, taking down Goldfish Gaming in a 3-0, the former CCS champions. Then it got a little bit dicier against Glaive Bingus as there was a 3-2. So that one did, go all the way to the finish line in a banger, as Sultan was kind of alluding to. And then finally against ID Eclipse last week, the 3-2 as well. So just very, very close by the skin of their
Did we
I
get a
think-
cutoff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have Elsa's voice cut off.
Mic just
Yeah.
We lost our
Hopefully
host.
connection. Yeah.
Well, until Elsa gets back, I think he was talking about Gamma's, regular season, cutting it a little close towards the end.
Oh yeah, the playoffs, the last, their last two best of fives. They have gone to 5 games. The one against, was it Glaive? I think that one, Glaive obviously played well. They have talented players, but I also think that Gamma went a little bit cocky into that series. This is a team that they had just pounced pretty easily in the regular season. I think they might have even had a sub when they did that, and we were also focusing all our Dorado power on Epsilon winning APL finals that moment. So, all that made it a little rougher for Gamma to 3-0 them. At the end of the day, they managed to pull through and win, but it was definitely a rough series for them. Glaive definitely made them work for it, but clutch prevailed.
Yeah.
Can
And
anyone?
then,
Do we have Elsa
do we have
back?
Elsa back?
Nope, I don't know. Maybe
Oh
not.
wait, I hear you.
Yeah, I
Oh,
hear
Yeah,
good.
there
you.
you go.
I am. Thank you so much. I don't know.
Can we get-
Discord
can we get-
loves to randomly change my mic source. It's very cool.
Yeah.
So yeah. Thank you so much for filling in. Wait, did we finish with Gamma here yet, or are we still on Gamma? Or
We
I
talked
mean,
about the Glaive series.
oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, we can keep going. We can just go over
Yeah.
them really quick. ID Eclipse. I mean, that interest is always going to be a little bit hard to analyze because at the end of the day, for whatever the reason might have been, Gamma played without two bans, and it took them 5 games to finish that off. But I do think that one of Gamma's strengths is their really in-depth planning. You know how hard how hard and serious they take their draft prep, and them, not being able to have those two bans really affects a team like Gamma, that is I feel like a little more methodical in their gameplay, and is a little more reliant on draft going their way for them to have a good series. Ultimately, again, another series where they won in the end, but this one at least, I think that external factor makes it a lot harder to say how much of a rough time they've really had. And I think, with those two series, it's easy to look at Gamma and say that they've struggled on the way here. But, I think that maybe they're starting to be a little underrated as, the perennial Thursday favorites can be, right? Uh, but, I think they should be able to give Omega a run for their money and vice versa.
Yeah, and Zol, you're right. That first ever competitive ruling against Dorado Gaming definitely
Hey,
did
that competitive
affect
ruling
them
was
in
against
that
Hazem
series.
individually.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for
oh,
pointing that out.
Hazem is just
The ruling said it was specifically against Hazem. Dorado's name is still
yo.
clean.
I just noticed that you were trying to avoid saying it. So if it wasn't associated with Dorado, I just
No, it
didn't
wasn't. It was
understand
not.
why that would
No,
be. But anyways, moving on. As we move on to Omega, Dorado Gaming Omega, for Omega, a little bit interesting, seeing as it is technically their second run through CCS, although obviously very, very different roster
Yeah.
coming in. So
Yeah.
in that way, it's not whatsoever the same. But regular season, they didn't have that any stumbling blocks as
Mhm.
far as actual matches. They were 7-0, 14-2 as far as the individual game score. So just dropping one individual game in 2 of their matches. And I was looking here to see what that was because of course I didn't
Akuma.
have it ready.
They dropped a
Akuma?
game to
Um,
They dropped a game to Sluter's Riven, and then they lost the game to Undying Tyrants because DoG
yeah.
disconnected in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
As good
So
as they are, they cannot win 4v5.
yeah, so not as is clear, they're pretty smooth for Omega, really dominant through Wednesday, which I think a lot of people coming in at the very least considered to be kind of the harder day, or sort of that's the
Yeah.
stereotype at least we have here in CCS. So I think that makes it especially impressive. And their group did have the ID versus ID finals crushed, obviously
Mekalo.
early on, but. Anyways, so that's the regular season. Not much more to say about that, I guess. But as we entered the upper bracket run for Dorado Gaming Omega, they won a 3-0 against MNG Raijin Storm. Not
Yeah.
too many issues there. I don't really remember that one, to be completely honest.
Yeah, it was that series was. I mean, I don't really think MNG really ever had a chance of winning that series. Even it was just too big of a gap. They came in relatively low on their side of the bracket. They did beat the KFC Wicked Zingers on the way there, but
True.
I don't really think that means too much. Unfortunately, when you're facing a team that's on another caliber like Omega, and there's not much to say about that series. It's not really memorable. They have some solid players, but ultimately, it's just you just can't. Having just some solid players isn't enough to stop a team that's built to be five powerhouses from the ground up.
Again, going into the next series was against Omega Gaming Obsidian, who I think, well, at least for me, I guess, as a casual observer, not as intimately connected, as I guess on the Rift, I'll say. Omega Gaming was 7-0 as well in the regular part of the split regular season, 14-2 game score, so matching Dorado. So
Yeah.
with that really impressive record coming in, and they did manage to take one game, but even in that one game, it kind of felt like they were clawing, to try to take that one, and the rest was pretty dominant from Dorado.
Yeah, I mean that series. I guess just to preface it, I do think that Omega Gaming Obsidian is and have always been a pretty good team. I also do think that they were a little overrated. Um, maybe they had players that have performed well in other leagues or in the past and that have reputable names, Delilah, Civil, Demo. But one thing like kind of the point that I had mentioned earlier that at this point, at least from our own team building perspective, is you don't really want to have any sore weak points, and I think at the end of the day, even Omega Gaming Obsidian had those weak points and were not able to really keep up with Dorado Gaming Omega when push came to shove, or even with CBR when it came down to the lower bracket.
What do you think, Chelsea? You're very good at calling people overrated. Do you agree with Zol that Omega was overrated, or Omega Gaming Obsidian was overrated, or do you feel like Dorado Omega is just that good?
I mean, Zoel just didn't go out and say that UBC Sauter was really bad, but he was really bad. And I think Omega Gaming Obsidian, I know that I remember I was doing my power rankings and Civil, I think, called it the nepotism reports because I had Omega Gaming not at the top. And that felt very good, very vindicating watching them take a fast track to elimination. But, they weren't as monster as they thought they were. Delilah, while having a really good, regular season, sort of fell off a little in playoffs. Like, I don't think Delilah played bad, but like, I was, people are ready to say that she was the top jungler in the league, and I don't know, Dojo's, proved all the haters wrong in that series. Respect to him, and I don't know, it just seemed like a collapse, and it's the same thing that happened to a similar roster of theirs in Aegis. Had a good regular season and then fall apart in playoffs. So I don't know. Maybe they just weren't preparing for those best of fives properly. Maybe they got lucky during the regular. I mean, I don't think they got lucky during the regular season. I think they're all like good players, right? I think it's just something that
Yeah. I don't think it was luck. I definitely,
yeah,
they were at least top five team in the whole tournament. Up there with ID and maybe CB Rush. I'm a little surprised that CB Rush beat them. I do think that uh, Dorado Gaming Omega had an easier time against CB Rush than they, despite going to Game 5,
yeah.
than they did versus Omega Gaming Obsidian. So they're a good team, but again, something that I'd emphasize that it's just the difference between being at the very top and being really good is those gaps that really show when push comes to shove. But if you mention that to people, they tell you it's just Dorado bias. But um, I guess
But no
I
way,
guess
no way is the
I
owner biased.
yeah,
No.
yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm biased.
Oh, it doesn't mean you
You know,
can't. It doesn't mean you can't
but
be right as well,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely do feel vindicated that my both my teams and news here in spirit, but both my teams still in here are in the finals.
Yeah, they're already dead bad.
The ghost of martial arts for why is still split pushing and the Aatrox, like for all of eternity. But we mentioned CB Rush. That was who Omega. They did. Dorado Omega brought that momentum right into that series. Going up 2-0, and then Glacial turned on the I don't know, augments to his computer that made him do more damage, and all of a sudden CB Rush brought it to Game 5. So definitely didn't. It seemed maybe less close than it felt because of the individual games and the gap there was there, Sultan. I don't know how much of that series that you watched, but do you feel like there's any takeaways going into the finals that are relevant from the Dorado Omega versus CB Rush, or even kind of that thing of dropping 2 games after going up 2?
Well, I feel like in Rush's case, like I will just call it awkward when they just tend to show up to some of the games where you just don't expect them to be. It's just out of nowhere Glacial pops off, or like Rutledge has a incredible Vel'Koz game or somewhat like out of nowhere. So I feel like Rush just has those games even when they're against teams better than them. They can pull those like, oh wait, how are they winning this? Types of games. Most of the time, they've been like accustomed to like one of the best teams in Plat Amateur for a while now. At least most of the leagues that they played in, they've at least been like championship contenders. But Omega, like Dorado Omega, is just they eventually brought it up. Like I think I was saying it before as well. It's just the way that Dorado just. I personally have never seen, at least the ones that I watched, them lose a game 5. So I guess they just bring a much better focused team environment when the game 5 comes around. But it's just I've never seen Dorado lose a game 5 until out of the ones that I watched. So unfortunate for CB Rush in that series.
Well, if we go to game 5 tonight, I can guarantee you, I would bet my life that you will see Dorado lose a game 5. Chelsea, did you have something quick to say? And then we're going to jump into our next segment.
Yeah, something quick to say is that I think the elephant in the room for the CB Rush Dorado Omega series is Omega's interesting draft decisions starting all the way back from game 2. I think you can look at that as, I mean, they were clearly flexing on their opponent. Yeah,
Ego draft.
we got the Kennen, we got the Grays, we got the Yone jungle, and as much as you can like almost scapegoat that as to why they lost, which realistically, that is definitely the biggest contributing factor to why they lost. I don't want people to use that to diminish the performances that CB Rush had, specifically Glacial. And while I find it extremely funny and I do get paid to make fun of Glacial, he did his best. He came, he put his whole heart on the rift, and I think at some point, you got to give credit to him where credit is due.
Definitely. And so that's where we are. And that brings us to now. And that brings us to our next segment, which is the Dorado Championship Series version of This or That. Mark C, if you're listening, please don't sue us, I guess. Flay is the one who wrote it, so blame him. And because, we don't have a ton of time, I do want you to, be pretty brief with your answers. You can justify it if you want, but we're just going to go quick. I think that's how it goes anyway. So first one, I'm going to go to Zol first. Who's going to have more deaths this series, Chasm or Dalton?
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's a really hard question. I don't know how to do it succinctly, but I don't know. They're just going to be a coin flip.
You can say one of their names. That's how I would suggest doing it.
More deaths. Honestly, given the last week performance, I'm going to have to give it to Hazem. I think if he hasn't turned it around, he's going to be gushing out blood this series.
Sultan, what do you think?
Just has him. I don't know how many specific deaths he had in the last series, but even if he has like 2 or 3 of those games, it's just going to be not even close. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Chelsea.
Dalton, because I think Cosm is so tired of being memed about it that he will do everything in his power not to sprint it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna officially vote, but having casted that series last week, I'm gonna say I think Chasm's gonna have high on the priority list, not die. But old habits die hard. So, all right, going into the next question though, Chelsea, I'm gonna throw it back to you because it's useless to throw it back to Zol first on this one. Does O2 deserve that 1K? Yes or no?
Does 0-2 deserve that 1K? No, he's a rat.
Sultan?
Huh. I guess if it wasn't 0-2, it might have been deserved, but since it is 0-2, yeah, no.
All right, Zol, do you have any statements to make here now that apparently you've won this gaslighting competition?
0-2 should have pulled through with the terms of the agreement. It's not my fault he didn't want $1,000.
No, Kizzy.
You heard
well,
it
again, if you don't have $1,000, you don't make it bet for $1,000.
I mean, I have $1,000. But
no, not you. The other side of the.
Hey, you spit.
If you can't put it on the table, what is the point of you putting $1,000, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, at least he didn't message people on Discord and ask them for the money after losing. Better than that. But anyways, next up, more likely, Sultan, I'm going to go to you this time first. More likely, Justin gets benched for Kibbles or Dojos gets comp ruled mid-series.
Oh. I gotta go with the first one.
Keep in mind, this was written by Flay. All right.
I'm not asking questions. I'm pretty sure
he's going with the Justin getting benched for Kibbles.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. All right, Zol, you next.
Can Riot ban you for chatting in all chat during custom games?
I've actually wondered about that. I've wondered about that. I'm
Like,
not
can
sure.
you say the most heinous things in the world in a
Can you
custom game and get
report people
reported?
after? Can you
No.
report
Okay.
people in customs? Because I feel like
Chat-
if you can't report people, then it's unlikely.
Okay. Chat saying no. I'm gonna have to say. I'm still gonna have to say Bozo's getting banned for some past indiscretions.
All right. Well,
I don't know for what, but you know, he's probably getting banned.
and Daddy Zillion, take note. Please have the all chat disabled on the screen
Oh,
during the series. But
No,
Chelsea,
keep it.
or-
I think.
go ahead.
All right, I think it's more likely that Bozos gets banned because he is going to be saying the most heinous stuff everywhere, no matter whether it be all chats and also, unless you're Zol and you're deafening someone mid call, Dorado is very loyal, and I don't think they do Justin like that.
All right. Next up, who's easier to replace? The player that would be easier to replace. I think this is going to hurt someone's ego. It's someone who has definitely, a chip on their shoulder from being called a passenger by the shadows. Joker is the first one. Who would be easier to replace, Joker or Rare Candy is on the other side?
Oh,
what do you
that's-
think?
that one's actually really fucking hard. I mean,
no.
and I think this is more of a like plotted towards Rare Candy, that this is actually even taking me any thought, because normally I'd just be like Joker's harder to replace because he's Dorado's talisman, probably our most winning player ever. I mean, at the end of the day, it's no one's going to replace Joker, and even if Rare Candy is extremely hard to replace, Joker's just harder to replace. But Rare Candy's just been so instrumental for Gamma. In a team surrounded by like diamond stars, he's the low plat menace jungler. That's the best jungler in Thursday. But it's gonna have to be Joker, harder to replace player.
Somebody else.
I'll go. I'll say Red Candy. Like I feel like I guess this is a jungle bias here, but I feel like it is harder to replace a jungler in the team where he's controlling the most things instead of if you probably get another good ADC, the team might just function just as well. So I feel I'll give my colleague a bias there.